um,
You've
courts
got to
here.
defeat, this is Jason responding to that. You've got to defeat their assumption and presumption that you're engaged in the act of transportation, which is the only activity that they can regulate.
Yes.
They're supposed to, I don't want to take much time on this. They're supposed to conduct an investigation, coming to the conclusion that you're actively engaged in the act of transportation, meaning you're transporting persons or property for hire on the roadways, and that's the only thing that they can regulate. It's a massive criminal conspiracy to enforce the transportation code on the unaware traveling public. And I'll put in the chat window exactly what to say, what I have used multiple times successfully to avoid getting a ticket and was completely let go 3 different occasions just using the what we call the traffic script. And I got that exact script from a personal friend of mine who is a former deputy sheriff who actually read the transportation code and was fired when he brought it to the attention of his superiors that they're illegally enforcing it on the unaware traveling public. So I'll send that into chat and you can private message me. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Jason, is that you talk about transportation, but what about the issue of commerce?
It's the same thing. Anything, we have the right to travel unmolested on the roadways for our own personal pleasure. The Supreme Court has ruled that multiple times, and they are conning everybody from the age 15 onward to go to driver's ed and get a driver's license, which is an adhesion contract. You know, that's where one of the 4 adhesions where you're checking off, I am a U.S. citizen and I am registering to vote. It's through the Department of Motor Vehicles. And then you're affixing state plates, which are copyrighted plates on your car, and associated stickers for inspections and so forth. And it's just one giant scam. So Eddie Craig he was a deputy sheriff in Nacogdoches County, Texas. He read the transportation code in its entirety. Then he read the penal code and the criminal code, and he has a lawyer's mind, but he quickly discovered the fraud that they have. It's right there in black and white that they have no authority, none. This goes with every state in the union. None of them have the authority to regulate non-commercial traffic. Mm-hmm. And they'll use terminology that we have to unlearn. They'll use operating, which is a commercial term. They'll use the term motor vehicle, which is a commercial term. And they'll use the term driving, which is a commercial term. And the simplest way to rebut any of this, everybody should know this and they should share it with everyone they know, is never interface with any of these law enforcement agents unless you're recording the conversation. Mm-hmm. And say exactly this. This conversation is being recorded. I am not engaged in the commercial use of the highways or the byways, nor am I operating in any for-hire capacity. Please acknowledge that you've been so informed. That's all you need to say, and that is the basis. We're talking about fraud, right? Just like the birth certificate is fraud, they're approaching you under the assumption and presumption that you don't know what you're doing, and that they can ensnare you into their scheme, which is inland piracy, as Anna says. But it's a simple statement, and you just keep rebutting. And Anna says, of course, you say, I'm exempt from foreign law under Amendment 11 of both the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the United States of America, and I claim my exemptions. We should memorize that. I wrote it down on a postcard. I read it over and over and over until I could articulate that statement, which is one paragraph, to anybody who approaches us when they presume they have authority over us. And this goes for anybody. It doesn't mean you don't need to be an American national or anything. I yield.
Could you send those to me, those 2 statements, Jason?
Sure. I'll put them in the chat right now. I did earlier, but I will now. It's, and it's something we all need to know.
Who does the DMV typically report up to? The Department of Transportation and the state of state?
Yep.
Okay.
So that's why I was saying we need to have a letter along with the voter registration.
Well, voter registration is handled by the Secretary of State.
I know that, but we have the 2 tax letters go out to Holtzville and DC. We have the Secretary of State letter. We have the Declaration of Political Status that's going to Pompeo or his successor. We don't even know who that is, do we?
Yeah.
So I think we need to have another document as required for our 928s, which is addressing the DMV. That's one of the 4 adhesion contracts that we've signed before we were even of age. We weren't even age 18, let alone 21. So how could we possibly have contracted? And these are all unconscionable contracts, which basically, force us into their jurisdiction. So you rebut it on the side of the road to prevent yourself from ever getting into a court system situation. And I've used this personally on New Year's Eve, 2015 in Connecticut. I was pulled over, Connecticut State Police, and the officer said, "I'm Officer so-and-so from the State Police. I need to see your identification." And my response was exactly in this tone: "This conversation is being recorded. I'm not engaged in the commercial use of the highways or the byways or in any for-hire capacity. Please acknowledge that you've been so informed." And the cop squinted and he thought about it and he said, "You're not in Texas," because I had Texas tags on my car at that time. "You're operating a motor vehicle on Connecticut highways, and I need to see your identification." I asked, "What form of identification do you require?" "Your driver's license," he replied. "Why have you pulled me over?" was my response. "You were speeding, sir." And I said, "It is nothing short of fraud," just like that, with that tone. And he put up his hand and he said, "Sit tight. I'll be right back. Stay in your vehicle." As soon as they heard fraud, right? Because it's total fraud that they're engaging the traveling public and trying to ticket them for any number of these ridiculous traffic offenses when they have only applied to commercial motor vehicle traffic. And the Texas Appellate Court has proven that there is no such operator's license that they're requiring people to have, which reversed the charges where people were being charged for driving while license invalid. There is none. There can't be. In Texas, there's a learner's permit, there's a commercial motor vehicle license, and there's an occupational license, which you get when you have a DUI. So which one of those 3, Officer Stupid, am I supposed to be presenting to you? There is no license, because it's converting a right to travel into a privilege that is licensable. It cannot happen. And anyway, Eddie was fired. So he's made it a point to teach the people over the last 20 years this fraud called the law versus the lie. But the sad part about it is that he only has classes of about 20 people. The entire Coliseum should be filled with people here in Austin, Texas, learning the truth. But nobody cares until they get a ticket themselves, and then they want his undivided attention and they want it for free to get him out of the mess. So again, this comes back to exercising who you are and who you are not, in which capacity you are operating in. That's the most important word, is capacity. You're not operating in any commercial capacity. You're traveling, which is your right, in any conveyance of the day.
So how do you purchase? The problem in New York is when you want to purchase a car and they won't let the car off the lot without the license, the registration, and
it's
of
all
course,
fraud.
the insurance. Yeah.
It's all fraud. Well, you can obtain a license. I renewed my license because I needed to rent a car before COVID happened, but I made sure I did not check off I am a U.S. citizen, and I did not check off I wish to register to vote, because I've undone the voter registration and the U.S. citizen bit through all my paperwork on the public record. But also I used the byline to sign my driver's license, and they didn't like any of that at all. But what I neglected to do was take a photograph of that paper application I did at this local sub branch of the DMV as evidence that I did not check off those boxes, because once they receive that document, because they're all a bunch of criminals, they could have easily just checked it off for me. So what I'm saying, Terry, is we need to have a letter sent to the DMV and demand that they respond to acknowledge the fact that we are not U.S. citizens and we are not registering to vote, and that we be recognized as state nationals. Thank you for your time.
Terry, Stan, everybody on the call, Stan on Tampa. Jason, that was very well done. If we could take that segment out and share what you just did, that would be amazing.
I'd like to do a whole seminar on this, actually, and somebody mentioned doing something about role play. It's very important. I mean, they use this. In fact, they've gotten some of our nationals and rolled them under the bus here simply on traffic offenses. After I sat with the sheriff, by the way, with this woman, and told the guy there is no operator's license, and showed him the Supreme Court rulings proving the right to travel and showing him Eddie Craig's seminar material, proving that a person is not the living man. I mean, but they still went after and arrested her twice using driving while license invalid as the excuse. So we really need these Continental Marshals to get up and running and handle this